Hello everyone, my name is Michal Brygidyn. I work as a cloud security architect for Zibia in Poland. But what I do after work is a bit more interesting because I wear a white hat and I'm a security researcher trying to get admin access on your AWS accounts. And today I will show you how I do it so you can protect your accounts from me. First scenario is very, very simple. It's just HTML. All you need to do is you need to take a look at the source code, check JavaScript, for example, or comments. It looks like that. It's still there. It's still live. Someone just left a comment for another team, and this is a part of configuration of credentials files for AWS CLI with access and secret keys here. And these keys were already for a user, IAM user with administrator access. So that easy, and voila, we have admin access here. What went wrong here? They decided to leave a note for next team. Hey, here's how we did that. If you just copy this, it will work the same for you. But the next team forgot to remove that. And in the first place, comments in HTML are not a good place to store your secrets. Let's move to another one. And this one is a bit more interesting. It all starts in GitHub. Last month, unfortunately, GitHub updated a search engine and a method of indexing code. So it's not that easy to find what I was looking for here, but still, let's start with public GitHub repositories. There are many, many repositories that you can all access on GitHub. And if you know what you're looking for, you can find interesting stuff there. For example, configuration files for different projects. And these files usually contain plain text credentials for you to just take and use. In my case, it was a bit more interesting because values of these variables were encrypted. So let's start first by showing you how it looks like usually in GitHub. You can find config files with some connection strings with login and password, or mail configuration, login password server, or any other connection type. Sometimes there are even AWS credentials that are still valid. AWS is doing a good job of looking for credentials on GitHub and then adding a policy, a quarantine policy on your account if they find something. But I found quite many credentials that were still working. But in my case, I found a credential file, encrypted values. So I started to dig deeper, and in the same repository, there was a Java class with the whole logic behind the encryption and decryption of these values, including the secret key, the encryption key used for that. I asked them why. Oh, it's the only place where we use that. Okay, thank you. With that, I got access to Office 365 because the config file had Office 365 account credentials for SMTP, but hey, if it's SMTP, it may be a real user. So I logged in and I got access to a real user in Office 365 with access to all apps there. For example, Teams. So I was able to send a message to CTO saying hi, and he got a message from no reply at example.com. But there's nothing about AWS on Teams, so maybe find another place like SharePoint. Many teams configure their space in a way that's public in terms of the company, in the context of company. So if you have a valid account, you can access their SharePoint space and check their files. So I found a space owned by help desk team, and there was a PDF file with Jira configuration. The help desk team was asked to create a Jira instance, Jira server instance, and document every single step. And this is what they did. They documented every single step, including creation of the super admin account with login and password. And then next thing, I already found a login and password for Jira. So now let's find this Jira. And it was a public endpoint, jira.example.com. It was very easy finding. And with credentials the super admin account, I was just able to log in there and check all projects. I was looking for projects with AWS in name, and there was quite many, but one was more interesting than others. And there was a ticket in that project. Hey, please create IAM user for us for Jenkins. And there was a comment, oh, here are your keys. So thank you for that. It was admin access. What went wrong here? First of all, do not hard code your config values. There are other places like secrets managers like vaults. And if you push something by mistake to the repository, Git remembers. There's a history of everything that you push there. So it's not enough to just push a new version with some dummy value. You need to rotate the password that was pushed there and make sure that when I find it, it's not valid anymore. Then bad tools like why using public GitHub repository if the company owns enterprise version? It was help desk team. They didn't know what the developers were using, so they decided to use the first tool they found in Google. It was just create GitHub account and you will have your repository. This is what they did. And yeah, they didn't know that the help desk team didn't know that if they put every single step in a file that is shared with the whole company, then the whole company can read the file and get a login and password to one of the critical systems. Next one, who uses PHP? Okay, we got one. Symfony Profiler. Symfony is framework, a PHP framework, and Profiler is developer toolbar helping you to debug the application. And it gives you access to server parameters, environment variables, history of all requests to that app, including post requests to login endpoint. And in older versions, you are also able to preview parameters YAML file or any other file from the application code. It looks like that. If you check environment variables, you can already see that there are some secrets, S3 key, S3 access key, secret key, but it's only S3 access. I need admin. S3 is fine if you need access to some data, but I need more. So I was looking for access to the application itself. And there's a search functionality for requests. If you just look for request, post request with code 302 and the endpoint is login, then you will find login request with plain text, login and password. Sometimes in the newer version, password is masked here in this window. So just scroll down and there's a raw request with plain text password. With that, I was just able to log into this app, in this internal app, and it was a dev version of the internal app, and the account gave me admin access to that internal app, but still it was a non-production development environment, dev.example.com. So what's the next step? Remove dev. And try it on example.com. Hey, guess what? It worked. So I had admin access to their internal app on the production environment. And the app had many internal apps available through the SSO, including CRM, but I don't need access to data, I need AWS. So there was webmail. And when I accessed that, I found a lot of AWS emails, invoices, trusted advisor emails, etc. So first thought, hey, maybe this is a root user account. Let's try to reset the password for that account on AWS. So I tried that, and I got a link to reset the password to that webmail, and I clicked it. I was able to reset the password and log in. No MFA on a root user account. And what's more interesting, it wasn't just a single account. It was the organization master pair account. So I just got root access to organization root account with a possibility to access admin role on all their accounts. Problems here, first of all, exposed development environment. If you don't earn money on the environment, just don't lose it. So hide the non-production environment behind a VPN or internal network only. And do not copy database from production to non-production, or if you don't do that, then also don't use the same password for non-prod and prod, because this is how I got in. And the email used as AWS root account user was also used for other services. There was a Datadog, there was a Cloud Health, and some more. So they were using a single account because they got access to it, and it was easy for them to use it. But it was also easy for me to access all other services from this single account. And no MFA. There are two things that I want you to remember from this presentation. One, use MFA everywhere. It makes my life harder. Next one, who uses Kubernetes? Okay, this one starts from publicly exposed Kubernetes control plane. I'm checking shutdown senses and binary search engines every week to look for new instances of Kubernetes exposed to internet. So someone decided to deploy Kubernetes in public subnet with public IP and no role-based access control on it. It means that if you know the IP, you can just connect to it and do whatever you want. And if you have access to the control plane, you can configure your kubectl and extract things like secrets. These secrets are base64 encoded, so easy to decode. Config maps, so the contents of configuration files that you use for your pods. And yeah, the list of all pods with configuration of them. It looks like that. It's the output from my tool that already grabs everything. It can find a list of pods. I can see if it's running or not, how old is it, namespace and name of the pod, then secrets, name of the secret, and some credentials there. As you can see, sometimes even AWS access secret keys there. And then we have config maps and more passwords in here. So from secrets, I already extracted credentials for S3 access, but still it's not admin. I need admin. But it also contained login and password for Jenkins. I like Jenkins because Jenkins is usually admin in your infrastructure because you use Jenkins to deploy stuff on your cloud. So when I get in, I have access to your cloud. But I only have these credentials, but there was a pod running on the same Kubernetes called Jenkins something. So there are two ways to get in. Either find public endpoint for that Jenkins, jenkins.example.com, or try to forward port 8080 of that pod to your local machine, and using your browser and your local machine and port forwarding, you can get access to this Jenkins, and you already have login and password, so easy to just log in. When in Jenkins, you can check Jenkins credentials because many teams use Jenkins credentials as a secure way to store credentials. It's not secure; it's one-liner to extract everything from that. So there are some interesting. There were some interesting credentials there, like access to AWS, but only Lambda and SQS. There was also access to GitHub and other projects as well. But in the build log of one of the jobs, I found calls to AWS CLI. So I decided to just exec into the pod of this Jenkins and try to run AWS CLI commands. And yay, I'm in because it used a role and it was admin role. So this gave me access to their AWS account. What went wrong here? Yeah, first of all, public Kubernetes control plane. Why? In this case, it was just a mistake because they didn't know which one to use, so they decided to use the first one, and it was public, the public subnet. And I also asked them why they didn't use, they didn't add this one to the asset list for pen testing. Oh, it was only our development environment, and we do pen testing for production only. Okay, good for me. And then if there is any security feature enabled by default, preventing me to getting to your stuff, then please leave it enabled. Do not disable it. And there are many cases where I reported something to the company, and I told them that, hey, I got in. It's it is disabled. The security module is disabled. Airbag is not in use. Oh yeah, but this is a random IP that only our team knows, and when we get there, everything is open because only we know that the endpoint. Nope. If you don't know how shotgun sensors or binary edge work, they scan the whole internet IP by IP, port by port, and they index responses, banner responses that they get. So I don't need to scan the whole internet. I don't need to scan your network. I already know where is the endpoint. So it's one connection and I'm in. Nothing in your logs because it's one connection only. The second thing to remember after MFA, principle of least privilege. So if you try to configure access for your colleagues or for services for other resources, make sure you give them only the kind of access that they really need to perform their task, to do their job, and nothing more. Common scenario: someone joins a development team and the senior developer says, oh, give him admin so he will have access to everywhere and he will not ask us every day for new access. That's wrong, because when I get access to his account, I have access everywhere. Sometimes the problem is also in unprotected pipelines, CI/CD pipelines, because if you have a pipeline that is triggered by a change in code and I have access to your repository, I can push my code there and it will trigger your pipeline. It will build my resources in your cloud. If I have access to Jenkins directly, I can just bypass your whole pipeline that was defined in code. I can create my own job next to your pipeline and I can deploy anything to your cloud. So yeah, there are many more scenarios. This slide was created like a year ago and slides are still not ready, but let's do that. First of all, outdated software running on cloud servers. And this example is my favorite Atlassian product, Jira, in old version running on EC2. Old versions of Jira on Confluence and probably even Bitbucket had a problem with one of the plugins. Our plugin had a problem with that it was working as open proxy. So you have open proxy on EC2. So let's just ask for metadata and get session credentials and you're in. I don't know why, but they used IAM role on that EC2 with admin-like access. It was not full admin, but it was more than just power user because I had access to something in IAM. Next one, credentials logged in during the installation. I was asked to audit one of the customers' infrastructure, and they gave me a security auditor role, so read-only everywhere. And I found a Jenkins instance somewhere, and I already knew that it's public, and I was able to access it from my network, but it required login and password. So I was looking for a way in, found CloudWatch logs, log from installation of Jenkins, last line, login and password to Jenkins. So yeah, that easy. Then misconfigured virtual hosts. This one is interesting. It shows you a list of all files and the directory structure on your server. And usually it's like you install Apache and it gives you a default virtual host for HTTP and HTTPS. But then you wanted to serve your website, so you create another virtual host pointing to your direction. And if you access it by domain, then it points you to the right direction to your website. But if you access it by IP, like in this case, it's not configured. Your vhost is not configured to grab the IP, and it goes to default one. And the default one is usually one or two story up. So hey, this is the list of your files, and this one is interesting. .env file, because usually this is where I find credentials. Next one, debug pages from different frameworks, and this one is Python Django. it's pretty nice, and it knows that it should hide credentials. If there is a variable with key or password, it should mask it. But then we have broker URL. It's either salary broker URL or just broker URL, and it consists of access and secret key. And I found many instances of this, and it was only one key that really gave me access only to SQS. All other were more than just SQS. Sometimes even wildcard access for EC2. And then a small teaser for my next presentation that I created this year, backdoors, because the hacking scenarios showed you how I get in, but now I need to stay there forever. So I can create IAM users with names similar to your users, so you don't know it's mine. I can modify trust policies on your roles. If you don't use infrastructure as code, but manually create roles, I can modify the trust policy and allow my other role from external account to assume your role. I can create my own identity provider with the name similar to your SSO, AWS SSO identity provider. And you will not know which one is valid, so I will still have my access there using external identity provider. Or you don't use AWS SSO at all, but you have an organization. I will enable one for you. I will create a AWS SSO for you with local identity store with my user with access to all your accounts, and you will not know because you are not using that service. Then we have servers. I can create a new server, new EC2 server next to your EC2 servers because you have a lot of machines and you will not know that there is one more with similar name. And with public access, I can just SSH into it. And with a role attached to it, I can talk to your AWS account. Or if there is already instance running, I can just use SSM to log into your running EC2 and create a local user for me because it was already misconfigured that there is SSH available from the internet. So hey, thank you for that. Then we have network access, and I can just share your transit gateway with my external account and attach myself to your transit gateway, or I can create a peering with one of your VPCs if I have access to your account. And then I will not have API level access, but I will have network access. And if you don't encrypt anything in your network, then I can talk to it and read it. And then we have services like the Identity Center. I already told you about Code Pipeline. This one is interesting because if you don't use Code Pipeline, Code Build, etc., I can create my GitHub repository with Terraform code. Then I can create Code Pipeline connection to this GitHub repository and code build job that will be triggered by Code Pipeline whenever I update my Terraform repository. And you can cut me off from the account, but still I have access to the repository. I will push changes there. It will trigger the pipeline on your account, and it will rebuild all my backdoors. And the interesting one, Lambda function URL. You can create a public URL for your Lambdas, or I can create public function URL for my Lambda in your environment. And by just going to the URL, I can trigger the Lambda that will rebuild one of my backdoors or all of them. Also, a bit of hide and seek. If you find something and delete it, it will be logged in CloudTrail. So I can use EventBridge to look for events of where you can trigger Lambda that will recreate it. I can use step function, infinite step function with Lambda that will trigger my Lambda to just rebuild and rebuild and rebuild, or the same as before with EventBridge. I can create a cron on EventBridge, but I can also create a cron on EC2, one of the EC2s that will do something for me, like triggering pipeline to recreate my my backdoors. And many tools mark roles which use administrator access policy as dangerous. So instead of that, just use power user and IAM full. It's the same, but it can fool many tools, security tools. Same context. If you don't want to be caught by guard duty, do not use credentials extracted from EC2 outside of that EC2. So if I find access to EC2, extract metadata, I talk to AWS from that EC2 because then it looks like almost a valid connection. And I prefer to work in your office hours because then if you work like a lot on your accounts and I run my 1 or 2 queries, it will be lost in tons of other CloudTrail logs. And that's all. Thank you. Do we have any questions?
I really like the slide where you had the ideas for keeping a backdoor. Is any of this being built by infrastructure as code? So do you have Terraform or build any of these?
Yeah.
Publicly?
No. Yeah, I have it as a Terraform template, but it's not shared.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Same as all other tools that I use, because I used to look for these things manually, but then I decided to just automate the thing. And right now it's interesting configuration. I have a Lambda that asks binary edge, for example, for Kubernetes, and it gets a list of IPs. Then it saves the list on S3. If it's something new on S3, then another Lambda is triggered to parse the file, and each IP with port goes as a separate message to SQS. It triggers another Lambda that goes there and analyze what's inside. Then it saves files on S3, and after that, I have one that analyze file and say, oh, you should take a look at this one, and this one. So it's a bit faster than it used to be. If you have any other questions, you can find me on LinkedIn, and yeah, thank you.